my family for being here to support me today. My happy birthday to my girlfriend, happy birthday to my mom. Without any of you, I wouldn't be on this stage today. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Relay faculty and staff, Dean Eisenhower, Professor D, Professor Green, Professor Lee, Professor Blackner, Mrs. Sims, and all of the other instructors and professors that we've had along the way. My peers and I are better educators for having had the opportunity to learn from you all. Most importantly, I would like to thank my classmates, my colleagues, my friends. I know at times it may have seemed like this day would never come, but we made it, and more importantly, we made it together. With all the challenges that come with being like a full-time teacher, some of us brand new teachers, and being simultaneously enrolled in a graduate level program, like this is a process that we can now say we mastered. As I sat down to write this speech, the hardest thing for me to do was like to condense it into 5 minutes, because like as many of you know, economy of language has never been my strong suit. Yeah, y'all can laugh too, it's a teacher joke, it means I talk too much. Which ironically isn't a great trait for teachers, because just listening to a teacher talk isn't how students learn. Teaching is an interesting profession though, and not too many people realize it. If you juxtapose teaching with other professions like law and medicine, you find some striking similarities. For instance, there's a science and an art to our practice. The science lies in the research, the preparation, the collection of quantitative and qualitative data that we use to inform our practice. In the art, well, that's in the day-to-day performance. Just like a lawyer in a courtroom or a doctor in an operating room, teaching is a performance profession. To quote Paul Bambrick-Centoyo, he says, teaching is a job that requires the educator to perform a task with perfect accuracy in the moment. And let me be clear, the stakes are high. There's a misconception that some people are just naturally good at teaching, which I find incredibly odd because I've never heard anyone say, wow, she's a naturally good architect, or he's just naturally good at open heart surgery. And frankly, if anyone ever said that about my doctor, I wouldn't want them performing my surgery. But just like those professions, to become and remain an effective teacher, it takes practice, constant feedback, reflection, support, and time. There are long days and sometimes even longer nights. There's those questions that constantly run through your mind of, am I cut out for this, or am I doing right by my students? That's something that we've all gotten accustomed to here at Relay. See, teaching requires a constant reassessment of our skills, our knowledge, and the context in which we teach. But see, you all know that already. And I know it's kind of like I'm preaching to the choir, but I felt it necessary to take the time to remind you that it all mattered. That what you did mattered, that you mattered. Because so often the system in society leads you to believe that the work that you do doesn't. I once read somewhere a quote that stated that education is the civil rights issue of our time. And I wholeheartedly agree. We all know that systems operate to keep specific groups of people marginalized and oppressed. Specifically, the inequities that exist in this country's education system for students of color, Latinx students, students from low-income communities are key determining factors in increased crime rate, financial instability, and stunted economic growth in those communities. So I want you to think about this, because every day that you stepped into a classroom and delivered effective instruction, you were chipping away at that system. Every day that you were engaging students with a culturally responsive curriculum and holding students to a high expectation, you were chipping away at that system. Every day that you took time to build authentic relationships with your students and their parents, you were chipping away at that system. Every day that you told your students that you loved them, you were chipping away at that system. From this day forward, every day that you as a Relay graduate step into a classroom, a boardroom, a courtroom, an operating room, remember that back in summer 17, you made a commitment to fight injustice, inequity, and inequality wherever it reared its ugly head. You made a commitment to keep fighting a system whose sole purpose is to keep things as it is. Lerone Bennett Jr. once said that an educator in a system of oppression is either a revolutionary or an oppressor. Understand that the work that you do is revolutionary because of the time, the sweat, the tears, and hopefully nobody shed any blood. But the time that you put to get here today, you are the most qualified to do this work. And your work isn't done. I know that's kind of a bit of a paradox when we're sitting here at graduation and I'm telling you that you still got more work to do, but it isn't. We all came to each other and to relay at different points in our educational career. For some of us, this was just a step to make us more effective in the work that we were already doing, and for others, this was the beginning of our work. But in the words of the late, great Nipsey Hussle, the marathon continues. Amen. So I'm going to leave you with this. Continue to push yourself to be the best at your craft. John Cotton Dana once said, "Who dares to teach must never cease to learn." Continue to be reflective in your practice and in your mindsets. Continue to learn from your leaders and your peers, and continue to learn from your students, especially your students, because if you're not learning from them, then you're doing it wrong. Lastly, understand that to be complacent in the fight for injustice, in the fight for justice and equality, is to be complicit in the oppression of others. We must continue doing the work of unpacking our implicit biases and recognizing our privilege. Someone once told me that if you can't acknowledge your privilege, you will ignore someone else's oppression. So we must never stop doing that work. We must continue to be a voice, an advocate, an ally for our students of color, our Latinx students, our students from low-income communities, our LGBTQ+ students, and our exceptional learners. Let me wrap up here because I'm telling you, I could go for days. I told you, economy and language is never a strength of mine. But I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. And I want to say congratulations to my friends and your families on your accomplishment. Good luck on the start of the new school year, which for some people starts Monday. But lastly, class of 2019, let's go do work. And now I'm excited to introduce my fellow colleague and graduate, Joe Worthington.